He didn't win the lottery. He didn't inherit anything. He didn't launch a viral startup or get lucky on a crypto trade at the right moment. He just quietly did 13 things for years that the people around him never noticed. And by the time anyone around him realized something was different, the gap was already too wide to close. Not because he was smarter, not because he worked harder than everyone else, because he understood something about wealth that most people spend their entire lives completely unaware of. 13 things, done quietly, repeated consistently. And by the end of this video, you're going to see every single one of them. My name is Alex. I study how money, behavior, and the hidden psychology of wealth determine who builds financial freedom and who stays stuck in the same cycle for decades without understanding why. What I'm about to walk you through is drawn from one of the most comprehensive studies of wealth ever conducted. Hundreds of cases, decades of cross-referenced findings, 13 patterns that quietly separate the financially free from everyone else. Let's get into it. Here's the problem with how most people think about wealth. They're looking for it in the wrong places. They're watching the displays, the signals, the visible markers of someone who has apparently arrived. But the people doing the loudest financial performing are rarely the ones whose finances are actually working. And the people whose finances are genuinely working, compounding quietly, growing invisibly, building something real are almost never the ones you notice. Because real wealth doesn't announce itself. It accumulates. And the behaviors behind that accumulation are so quiet, so undramatic, so completely opposite to what financial content usually celebrates that most people walk right past them every single day. Here is the first one. Wealthy people are not just motivated, they are specific. Not, I want more money, not, I want to be comfortable someday. A precise number, a precise date, a written plan for what they will give in exchange for what they want to receive. And here is the part most people skip entirely. They write it down and they read it aloud every morning and every night as if it is already true. This sounds almost too simple to matter, but here is what is actually happening underneath it. The mind cannot pursue a target it cannot clearly see. Vague desires produce vague results. Specific burning desire, held consistently, fed with emotional intensity, begins organizing your perception, your decisions, and your daily behavior around that target automatically. You stop drifting. You start filtering. Every opportunity, every conversation, every decision gets quietly evaluated against the specific thing you have committed to. Most people never commit to anything specific, so they drift towards whatever is loudest, whatever feels urgent, whatever everyone else around them is doing. And they wonder why they never arrive anywhere they actually wanted to go. Number 2, they treat belief like a muscle. This is the one most people dismiss, and it is the one that explains almost everything else. Wealthy people understand that belief is not a feeling you either have or don't have. It is something you build, deliberately, through repetition, through the consistent refusal to allow doubt to dominate your mental environment. Because here is what the research consistently shows. The people who accumulated significant wealth were not the ones who never faced failure. Every single one of them did. They were the ones whose belief in their outcomes survived the failure. And here is the mechanism underneath that. The subconscious mind translates your dominant belief, whatever it is, into its physical equivalent. If you believe wealth is available to you, your subconscious filters your environment for evidence, opportunities, and connections that support that belief. If you believe wealth is for other people, your subconscious filters for evidence that confirms that too. Same environment, completely different financial reality. Not because of luck, because of the belief each person planted and then watered every single day. Number 3, they rewire themselves on repeat. The subconscious mind does not respond to commands. It responds to repetition. And wealthy people, whether they understand the mechanics or not, use this consistently and deliberately. They feed their mind the same precise, emotionally charged thoughts about their goal, their capability, their direction, repeatedly, until those thoughts stop requiring effort and become the default operating system. But here is where it gets dangerous for most people. The same mechanism works in reverse with the same efficiency. Every time you tell yourself you are bad with money, your subconscious records it. Every time you say wealth is not for someone like you, your subconscious files it. Every time you rehearse financial failure in your own mind, your subconscious begins building the infrastructure to make it real. What you repeatedly tell yourself with emotional intensity is what you become. Wealthy people choose their mental inputs like they choose their financial inputs. Carefully, consistently, with full awareness that what goes in determines what comes out. Number 4. They go deeper, not wider. Here is one of the most counterintuitive findings from the entire body of wealth research. General knowledge has almost no relationship with the accumulation of money. The people who built significant wealth were rarely the most broadly educated people in any room. They were the most specifically useful. They understood one area, one industry, one skill, one niche with enough depth that the market had no choice but to compensate them significantly for it. And here is the part that changes everything. You do not even need to possess the specialized knowledge personally. You need access to it. One of the most studied wealth builders in this research openly admitted he knew almost nothing about the technical side of his own industry and had no interest in learning it. His fortune was built by surrounding himself with a coordinated group of highly specialized individuals, each contributing specific expertise he didn't have, all aligned towards one definite purpose. The person who builds significant wealth is rarely the smartest person in the room. They're the person who built the room. Number 5. They use their imagination as a financial tool. Every financial reality you can see right now began as something someone imagined. Every business, every investment structure, every wealth-building system ever created. It started as a thought that had no physical form yet. Wealthy people don't treat imagination as passive daydreaming. They treat it as deliberate mental construction. Two modes of imagination: rearranging existing ideas versus receiving new ideas altogether. The first is taking what already exists and combining it differently. Most financial opportunities are identified this way. Most business models are built this way. The second is receiving ideas that seem to arrive from nowhere. The unexpected insight during a walk. The solution that appears in a quiet moment. The connection between two things that nobody had linked before. And here is what makes this practically useful. A burning, specific desire sharpens your mental focus so precisely that your brain begins generating relevant ideas automatically, without forcing it. You are not manufacturing creativity. You are creating the conditions for it to arrive. Change your environment deliberately when you feel stuck. The mind locked in one environment generates the same thoughts on a loop. The mind exposed to new inputs generates new combinations. Wealthy people are rarely sitting still when their best financial ideas arrive. Number 6. They build plans and rebuild them. Desire without a plan is just a wish with better intentions. Wealthy people understand this at a structural level, which is why they obsess not just over their goals, but over the specific practical architecture required to move from where they are to where they are going. And they do not plan alone. Every significant wealth-building journey in this research involved a coordinated group, people with specialized knowledge, each contributing something the builder didn't have, each receiving something of genuine value in return. But here is what separates wealthy people from everyone else when plans inevitably hit resistance. They expect the plan to fail, not the goal, the plan. When the specific plan breaks down, and it will, they do not treat it as evidence that the goal is impossible. They treat it as information that the plan needs to be rebuilt. A winner never quits the goal. They quit the plan that isn't working and build a better one. Most people quit the goal when the plan fails. That one distinction accounts for more of the wealth gap than almost anything else on this list. Number 7. They decide fast and hold firm. This appears in virtually every studied case of significant wealth accumulation. The habit of making decisions quickly and changing them slowly. Cut to a figure surrounded by competing opinions, being pulled in every direction, unable to move. Here is what happens to most people. They have a goal, they have a plan, and then they open it up to everyone around them. And everyone has an opinion, and the opinions conflict, and the confidence quietly erodes, and the decision gets delayed, and the moment passes. Analysis across hundreds of studied wealth builders revealed one behavioral trait cutting through all of them without any exception. They decided promptly when they had sufficient information, and they changed those decisions slowly, only when clear evidence made changing necessary. Not because they were arrogant or impulsive, because they understood something most people never fully grasp. Indecision is not neutrality. It is a decision. It is the decision to let time and circumstance choose for you. And time and circumstance are not working in your favor by default. When you know what you want, deciding becomes the easiest thing in the room. Number 8. They stay when everyone else stops. Persistence does not make good content. It does not fit in a highlight reel. It is not exciting to watch. It does not generate likes or shares. But it is the single behavioral trait that appears most consistently across every studied wealth builder without exception. Not because they never faced defeat. Every one of them did, repeatedly. But because they made a quiet internal decision, once, early, and permanently, that defeat was temporary information, not proof of impossibility, not a signal to stop. Temporary information about a plan that needed adjustment. And here's what persistence actually does that most people never fully understand. It buys time. And time is the variable that allows every other principle on this list to compound into something real. Most people stop just before the intersection where everything changes, not because the goal was wrong, because the timeline was longer than their patience. Wealthy people make peace with the timeline, and then they simply outlast everyone else who didn't. Number 9. They build a room of the right minds. No single mind contains everything required for significant achievement. This is not a weakness. It is simply the nature of human cognition. And wealthy people have internalized this fact and acted on it deliberately and consistently. A coordinated group of minds aligned toward one definite purpose generates more combined intelligence, more creative output, and more sustained momentum than any individual operating alone could produce. Think of it like connecting multiple power sources in the right configuration. The output multiplies beyond what any single source could generate independently. The same principle applies to aligned human minds. But here's what most people misunderstand about building this kind of group. It is not networking. It is not collecting contacts or attending events. It is finding people whose specialized knowledge fills the specific gaps in your own, and creating a genuine alignment of purpose where everyone in the group has a real reason to want the shared goal to succeed. Harmony within the group is not optional. It is the mechanism that makes the combined intelligence work. Without it, the group dissolves into competing agendas. With it, the group becomes something greater than the sum of its parts. Number 10. They redirect their most powerful energy. Every person carries a significant reservoir of motivational energy. Most people spend it on distraction, on consumption, on passive entertainment, on the performance of living rather than the building of it. Wealthy people redirect it. The most productive, most creative, most financially driven periods in any person's life are almost always connected to a powerful emotional state, a deep drive to prove something, build something, become something. That energy is real. It is one of the most powerful forces available to any individual. And it can be consciously redirected into creative output, professional excellence, and financial building. The key is awareness. Most people never realize the energy is there because they have always spent it before they could redirect it. Wealthy people learn to feel the energy building, and then they choose, deliberately, consistently, where it goes. That conversion from raw motivational drive into focused, productive output is one of the quietest competitive advantages a wealth builder can develop, and almost nobody talks about it. Number 11. They guard what enters their mind. The subconscious mind never stops working. It processes, filters, and acts on its inputs continuously, whether you're consciously directing it or not. Which means what you allow into your mental environment is not a passive experience. It's a choice, with financial consequences that compound over time. Wealthy people curate their mental inputs with the same deliberateness they apply to their financial inputs. They feed the subconscious consistently with desire, with the expectation of success, with enthusiasm for the direction they're moving. And they starve it, as much as possible, of the fear, doubt, and scarcity thinking that redirects subconscious energy toward the outcomes they're trying to avoid. Here is the critical mechanism. Positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind simultaneously. One always dominates, which means every moment you allow fear or doubt to dominate your mental environment, you are actively suppressing the belief and desire that would otherwise be directing your subconscious towards wealth. You are responsible for what dominates, and that responsibility, taken seriously, exercised consistently, is one of the most powerful financial decisions you can make. Number 12. They operate at a different frequency. A radio tower broadcasting and receiving clearly at a high frequency. This one is the hardest to explain, but it is too consistent across wealth builders to leave out. The mind operates like both a broadcasting system and a receiving system simultaneously. Thoughts charged with strong emotion, with burning desire, with deep conviction, and the clarity of a definite purpose held consistently, generate a quality of mental engagement that a flat, disengaged mind simply cannot produce. And that quality of mental engagement changes what becomes visible in the same environment. The environment is the same. The frequency is different. When your mind is genuinely alive with purpose and emotional intensity, it begins perceiving connections, opportunities, and possibilities that a distracted, doubtful mind filters out entirely. This is not mysticism. It is pattern recognition operating at a level below conscious awareness. Feed the frequency deliberately, guard it from the inputs that flatten it, and watch what becomes visible in an environment that hasn't changed at all. Number 13. They trust the signal. A figure pauses mid-decision, listening to something internal, then acts with quiet certainty. The 13th thing wealthy people do quietly is the most difficult to explain, and yet it appears in some recognizable form in virtually every studied case of sustained wealth building. They listen to something that cannot be fully explained by logic alone. A sudden certainty about a decision, an idea that arrives fully formed, a sense about a person, a venture, or an opportunity that precedes any logical analysis and turns out to be right. This is not luck. It is the creative imagination operating at its highest level. It is what emerges naturally when all 12 previous principles are working together. The desire, the trained belief, the rewired subconscious, the specialized knowledge, the persistent engagement with a definite purpose, creating a mental environment so aligned and so finely tuned that it begins receiving intelligence a distracted, doubtful mind simply cannot access. You cannot manufacture this, you cannot force it or schedule it, but you can create the conditions for it, and those conditions are the 12 principles that came before it. This is why wealth cannot be retro-engineered from the outside. You cannot copy the strategy of a wealthy person and expect the same outcome, because the strategy is always the last thing that appeared. The 13 principles are what made it work. Conclusion. 2 people, same starting port, completely different outcomes. Not because of luck, not because of timing, not because of who they knew or where they started. Because one of them was quietly doing these 13 things while the other was watching the displays and wondering why the gap kept growing. They burned for something specific and wrote it down. They trained their belief like a muscle until it stopped breaking under pressure. They rewired their mind on repeat until the right thinking became the default. They went deep into specialized knowledge and built a room of the right minds around them. They used their imagination as a tool, built plans, and rebuilt them without quitting the goal. They decided fast and held firm. They stayed when everyone else stopped. They redirected their most powerful energy. They guarded what entered their mind. They operated at a frequency that made the same environment yield completely different results. And eventually, quietly, invisibly, without performance, they developed an instinct that made every next step feel less like effort and more like clarity. None of this required extraordinary intelligence. None of it required perfect timing or extraordinary luck. It required 13 principles, applied consistently, quietly, over time, without an audience. That is what broke people never notice. Not because it is hidden, because it does not look like what they're searching for. The difference between being stuck and being free is not income. It's behavior repeated quietly over time. If one of these 13 principles named something you have been missing, hit the like button. It genuinely helps this reach the people who need it most. And if you want to see how to build the financial system that puts the first 6 principles into structural automatic action, which accounts, which transfers, and how to set it up in one afternoon, that video is right here. I'll see you there.